Onslow County John Doe, 1991, Hubert, North Carolina. Some hunters were out and about, and they were looking for raccoons in a wooded area near Bear Creek Road, where it intersects with Stewart Point Road in Hubert, North Carolina. They were out searching for raccoons in the woods when they found a skull on November 2nd, 1991. They would contact authorities, who located most of the rest of her remains around 40 yards away from the initial location. They assessed the clothing she'd been wearing and concluded that she most likely passed in the fall of 1989 or the winter of 1990. Because this area was so isolated, they concluded that it was most likely the result of foul play. However, they were unable to determine exactly what had happened to her. Whatever it was, it didn't leave a mark on her skeleton. Because of this, they hit a brick wall and they would close the case, which I actually don't understand. And if anyone's familiar with police procedures, if you could leave a comment below, I'm really curious. I don't know why they would close a case that is still unsolved. It might be, I suppose, so it statistically looks better for cases not to be opened, but I'm curious if there's any other reason. In this case, it's noted that it was reopened in 2020 and a new reconstruction was done, stating they believe the new reconstruction is the most accurate. It's noted that they are currently doing further tests to determine eye color and hair color. The Parabon snapshots that they do are really interesting. I'm not sure how accurate, like say the eye color is. I think it's probably the same sort of predictions and statistics that are used by like 23andMe, although probably more accurate. But I know like my 23andMe says that I should have blue eyes and I don't. It's believed that in this case, our John Doe was around 5'1" to 5'2", tall, white, and with what is described as a slight build. She was likely around 20 to 30 years old. They believe she had been where she was found from around 1 to 3 years. So before I get comments about my math, I just want to explain that in this case, the post-mortem interval is factored in. This would place her date of birth as around 1958 to 1970. She had a degenerative bone disease in her neck and possible back problems. She was wearing a heavy crew neck sweater that was either gray or brown, which was sewn with gold thread. She had on black or blue stretch pants as well as white slip-on shoes with a small bow on them. One problem with her recreation is that her mandible was never recovered, so they don't really know what her jawline would truly look like, which I'm sure is the reason for the one that originally looked like a very odd recreation. So the non-pixelated recreations are just an estimate. Without the mandible, they don't actually know. She'd had some dental pain recently too, in the upper teeth that were found, possibly more in the bottom teeth, as her upper right wisdom tooth had erupted, and the upper left wisdom tooth had been removed prior to her passing. She had what was described as an unhealed socket, so I assume this means that the wisdom tooth was removed more recently. If anyone has any idea what happened to her, please call the number on your screen. The Onslow County John Doe has gone unidentified for 31 years. The Polk County John Doe, also known as Andrea Doe, Cedartown, Georgia. This is one of the rare cases where we know who did it, and we know why, but not who she was. I suspect that when I tell this story, it might not elicit a whole lot of sympathy, so if I could just start out by mentioning this girl was just 18 or 19. She had her whole life ahead of her, and you never know who might have changed paths. Most of us have a chance to change it around and make different choices. She didn't get that chance. There was an explosion in a residence in September of 2003. This is when our young John Doe was found. She was the victim of a GS and her hands were duct taped behind her back. She wasn't alone, and there were 2 males with her in the home when it detonated in Cedartown, Georgia. Before we dig into what she looked like and who her family is missing, I'm just going to tell you what came out at the trial in 2008. There were 5 defendants in this case, the names of which are shown on the screen right now. A young woman named Amanda testified she found our John Doe and the 2 other men at the scene, and it's haunted her ever since. Although she's a cooperating witness, she was involved also in what happened. She testified that she suffers panic attacks and nightmares as a result, and there was actually also a 4th victim. He was named Arturo Torres Ventura. He survived a GS wound to his head and burns 75% of his body, but he never regained consciousness. Amanda testified that she routinely went with her co-defendant, Daniel Villanes Reyes, to the house that it all went down in. The place was known as a brothel, and the people running it would purchase large quantities of contraband, starting with an M that I'm not allowed to mention on YouTube, and then they would resell it to their own customers. However, contraband in question was a bad batch. And when I say M, I'm not talking about the one that is legal in some states. It's the one that does the most damage that can never be legal. Apparently, people they sold it to were complaining that they couldn't use it. So there was a dispute over money and paying. At one point, the young woman we now know as Andrea would throw a handful of powder into Daniel's face. That set off the chain of events that led to 4 people losing their lives and a young woman going decades without a name. Daniel pulled out a garbage bag, put it over her head, and used a weapon that starts with a G. It didn't stop there, however, and Daniel would insist that the woman testifying now, Amanda, that she take flammable liquid and splash it throughout the house, setting Andrea Doe and the other 2 men on fire. The trial involving this ended with the 5 defendants being convicted of a multitude of charges, stemming from their illegal exploits to how they took the lives of 5 people. It was those in the house and a few others that owed them money also. Included in this number is 2 people who were explained as being in the wrong place at the wrong time, though it doesn't specifically say what those circumstances are. In the end, indictments included 30 defendants from one gang, including charges of racketeering. But none of this helps with who the young woman was. No matter how it happened, she's someone's child. Andrea Doe was likely born 1983 to 1988, meaning she was mid-teens to 20 years old. She was of a small build, around 5'1" or 5'2", and around 100 pounds. She had straight, short black hair. She was wearing yellow metal earrings. There are no DNA or fingerprints, and while it doesn't specifically say why, I imagine the fire might be that reason, and maybe they won't ever be able to get DNA. That makes it just that much more important that someone come forward. While they think that her name was Andrea, they don't even know that for sure. Andrea Doe has gone unidentified for 19 years.
Thank you so much to everybody commenting. Even with just an emoji, it really has made a big difference. The current goal for the channel is 20,000 subscribers, but we aren't even halfway there as I record this. So if you enjoy the content here and you're not sure, take a peek to see if you're subscribed. Please consider subscribing and hitting the bell so you don't miss new episodes. Thanks everybody. Take care of yourselves and each other.